Predictive analytics. Say it once, say it twice. You'll be saying it a lot in 2015 if you're in HR or recruiting. According to Wikipedia, predictive analytics is an area of data mining that deals with extracting information from data and using it to predict trends and behavior patterns. Often the unknown event of interest is in the future, but predictive analytics can be applied to any type of unknown, whether it's in the past, present, or future. And joining me today to discuss the past, present, and future of HR technology and predictive analytics in particular is our good friend Bill Kutik, whose headline in a recent Human Resource Executive article was Predictive Analytics Dominates My First HR Tech Conference. Bill, great to see you and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you.
Your headline needs some explanation, Bill, because you were co-chair of the HR Tech Conference for 16 years, and your headline is that this is your first HR Tech Conference. So give us some explanation here.
The explanation is simple. It felt like my first HR Tech Conference as an attendee, because for many of those 16 years, I was just so darn busy running around, greeting speakers, trying to play host, and had no time for all the things that people love about attending the HR Tech Conference, which is seeing old friends, making new ones, networking, going to sessions, and all the rest. So this was the first time since the thing began, because of course I helped start it. This is the first time since it began that I got all those attendee benefits that people have been crowing about for years. And
so you prefer being a participant rather than the ringleader in Las Vegas?
Well, I'll tell you, there are 2 or 3 or 4 times when that's true. In the build up to the show, there are always periods of time where my wife Nancy would point out that the conference was driving me completely insane due to somebody dropping out, somebody changing their mind about something, and so those times I'm happily rid of. And then there's the actual attendance, which, as I said, I do prefer as an attendee. So, I'm happy as a clam about the whole thing.
All right, so let's talk about predictive analytics and take us down memory lane, Bill. When did the term predictive analytics first hit your radar screen, and who was touting it?
Well, my radar screen is far from perfect, but within the HR, there may have been predictive analytics in financial applications for 20 years, for all I know. But in HR, the first time that I saw it really was, surprise, surprise, from Jack Fitzenz in 2007. Now, 7 years ago, soon to be 8 years ago. Who formed a predictive analytics group in the Bay Area, which attracted some large vendors like Oracle and some small startups and individuals. And the fact that Jack was early is evidenced by the fact that his new book, and we know how long it takes to write a book and get it published from an established publication house, is called Predictive Analytics for HR. And it is a step-by-step guide for people how to do it, and I would recommend it to anyone who wants to start down the path.
Yeah, and I think you're probably right. I think, predictive analytics really started with financial services. I mean, when you think about it, your FICO score is a perfect example of predictive analytics.
Aren't you wise, Peter? That I think that is absolutely true, because the notion of predictive analytics is that you're taking past actions and trying to apply them to future events. And that's precisely what a FICO score is. Have you paid your mortgage on time? Have you paid your auto loan on time? How about your credit cards? Do you miss a month or not? And, fair or unfair, as a lot of people feel when their FICO scores are low, that is predictive of your future financial behavior.
Right, absolutely. Unfortunately, I edit video, and Michael Bagelman is the one who absolutely turned me on to this concept, and he's right.
Yeah, I believe he is right as well.
All right, so in your article, you wrote about David Weisbeck, who's Chief Strategy Officer, advisor, who in 2011 said predictive analytics focused on why employees leave, who is most likely to be leaving next, and who is likely to become top talent and why. So, do you see this as the thrust of most implementations and goals of current predictive analytics programs that are geared for HR and recruiters?
Partially, and Dave pronounces the company name Visier as though it were a Z, but
Oh,
it's Visier. He was very cautious. I mean, that company's been in the analytics business since 2011, and he was very cautious about claiming that they had predictive capabilities. So he mentioned those three questions that you mentioned and deliberately left out the biggest question that HR wants predictive analytics to answer, which is whom should you hire? Now, that question can be applied at various levels of what you well know is the recruiting funnel. It could be applied at the top and say, tell me the 10 people of the 500 that I have who are worth interviewing and moving forward in the process. Or it could be applied very close to the end and say, of these three people that I've got, who is likely to be the best candidate? In the end, that's what HR wants to know out of predictive analytics. Well, two things. One, who's going to leave? Who's in danger of leaving? And, should I care? um, and what can I do to stop him or her from leaving? And whom should I hire? I mean, that is the focus right now.
So back to this year's HR Tech conference. Since you had the luxury to actually participate in the conference this year, what did you hear that you believe will be most impactful concerning HR Tech in 2015?
Well, I mean, predictive analytics is absolutely at the top. What I saw reminded me so much of the gold rush, the land rush 9 years ago for talent management and the talent management suite. And there we saw companies from every different part of HR, performance management companies like SuccessFactors, learning management companies like Cornerstone and Saba, um, people fluent that didn't really have a specialty at the time but had a really good comp application. All of these people flooding into talent management and claiming to have the suite, or they would, very soon have the suite. And I see the exact same thing happening now. Companies from every which way coming into it. And the good news is, as you know, the talent management suite, Land Rush, worked out sort of fine.
Yeah, absolutely.
Halogen, another example. I mean, we got a bunch of suites out there that are pretty solid and pretty well integrated, and people can use, and they can either integrate them with their HRMS, their core HR, or they can buy a system that has both already to begin
Hmm.
with. But it worked out great for end users. It gave them choice and all the rest. So I'm hoping that will also be true of predictive analytics, because right now there are some overblown claims. God forbid, what a surprise in the software industry to have an overblown claim. Uh,
Yeah, right.
there are overblown claims. There are wild schemes that may turn out to be true. There are very solid foundations that haven't yet added the final bricks, and we got everything going on.
Well, let's
So that's the
let's go down that path a little bit because you talk about some very specific companies in your HR executive article. So let's talk about some of them, starting with, let's say, Cornerstone OnDemand.
Sure. I want to say that that article, as we all know, since HR Tech was back in October, there have been a bunch of new companies that have written me complaining that they weren't in that article.
Of course.
Of course. And I tried to tell them that the article was focusing on new entrants to predictive analytics, not so much the ones who have been doing it for a while. So Vimo, which is a boutique firm owned by Peter Louch, has been doing predictive analytics for workforce planning for a very long time. I discovered afterwards that Infor, a company whose name your listeners may not be as familiar with, but they own the former Lawson and Wizen, People Matters, and other pretty well-known products. They've just set up a predictive analytics team that is similar to their design team, which is in New York. Um, so they're in it as well. And when I wrote the story, I mentioned the fact that Oracle has for a while had what they call an advanced and predictive analytics module, which has been generally available for a while. The thing, predictive analytics is like search. If someone gives you a search demo, it's always spectacular. It's as though the search engine has been reading your mind, and every hit that comes up is just absolutely perfect. Well, that's a demo. And when you go out to do a search, it ain't going to be so great. Similarly with predictive analytics, when they give you a demo and they do their thing, it's always just, oh, unbelievably
Right,
wonderful.
right.
And then it's yet another thing to have it run in your office. Anyway, Cornerstone did an interesting thing. They bought a company called Evolve without an E, spent about $42 million on it. And this company for years had been focusing on the question of who would most likely succeed as an inbound customer service rep, i.e., a call center rep.
Which has the most churn of any industry out there, right?
The
Yeah,
world. Yeah.
absolutely.
I mean, I think they have to rehire the workforce 3 times every year to keep the places staffed. And, that's because it's the worst job in America since picking cotton on a Mississippi plantation in 1850. I mean, you're in there for 8 or 10 hours a day, however many hours with, two 20-minute breaks. And you otherwise have angry people on the phone harassing you, screaming at you, yelling at you, and otherwise abusing you.
Right.
And so frankly, I was guilty of ignoring Evolve for years because I thought that their problem, while not trivial, because you know how big call centers are for almost every commercial thing we touch these days,
Exactly.
but that it was an easy problem to solve. I thought that you assess them by strapping them into a set of headphones and screaming at them and abusing them for 10 hours. And then at the end, if they could still walk, you would give it to them. But that was unfair because, in fact, Evolve was doing what a lot of these companies are doing, which is, data science and really trying to expand the notion of machine learning and big data analysis and predictive analytics for this area. So, given the fact that Cornerstone has so many more clients in so many different verticals than Evolve does, I'm pretty confident they're going to expand rather quickly into other areas. And it'll be interesting to see what they come up with.
Yeah, probably the airline industry is one that they could expand that product into immediately.
Absolutely.
Yeah. You write that IBM was everywhere at HR technology, so expand on that a little bit.
Well, they were, and we don't need to go into those details. I mean, they bought the first pre-conference session. They completely sponsored the opening reception. They had private meetings for analysts and for customers and for prospects and all the rest. But the most important thing has actually happened since the event, which is I got this email from someone I don't know at IBM saying that Watson Analytics, which is their basis for
Mm-hmm.
predictive analytics, and the product manager named Eric Bokelberg, who works actually in Vermont, where historically IBM has had a very large chip manufacturing plant. He said, well, we weren't quite yet at predictive analytics. So I get this email from someone I don't know who says, hey, we're offering free trials of Watson Analytics. Just click on this link here and you can go play with it and figure it out. Well, I think I would recommend that everybody
Mm-hmm.
do that. And the URL is incredibly simple. It's one word, watsonanalytics.com. And I don't know if you have to, lend them your firstborn child during your free trial, or if you have to make some commitment to paying them later on after the free trial. But I haven't done it yet. So I would recommend people check that out and see what they're doing. Since, Watson holds out incredible promise of machine learning and cognitive computing, I'm just not sure yet how much of HR, the domain, it's learned yet. And being a cognitive computer, you've got to
Mm-hmm.
teach it every new domain. I mean, it doesn't Google itself to find out any answers to anything. It has to know it. So I'm sure there's an HR category in there, and so people can bang away on it and see what it looks like.
I'm wondering, is this the same Watson that plays chess?
You know, no, that actually isn't. That was Big Blue. And it's important for everybody to remember that these are marketing labels
Mm-hmm.
and that none of them is actually a box. None of them is actually a computer. They're
Mm-hmm.
all software.
Right.
Big Blue was chess playing software. Watson was sort of information and cognitive computing software, including some well-known applications like SAS, that company in North Carolina that's done analytics software for years. And I believe Cognos is also in there, which is a business intelligence tool that IBM bought a long time ago. So even though the IBM PR department will send out 4-color photos of this very exotic, very large blue box behind a glass enclosure and describing it as Watson, it ain't.
Mm-hmm.
Because Watson is simply software, and Watson Analytics is simply another SaaS application that you can access right now for free and probably sometime soon to pay.
Right. Well, that is interesting, and I'm sure a number of the listeners and viewers of this show will be going right to that site and seeing what they're up to. One more company I want to talk to you about that you wrote about in your article, which I think is probably the most surprising and interesting of the companies who are now jumping into this predictive analytics thing, is HireVue, which is a video interviewing platform.
Yeah, I mean they're the pioneers climbing out on a tree limb that may be strong enough to hold them all up, but may break off and have them tumble to the ground. But as you know, they are, as you just said, they are primarily a video interviewing company, and what they produce are video interviews that are done asynchronously, and so hiring managers can view them at any time that's easy and appropriate for them, which has been one of their core values that they've brought to a very competitive market, which they've managed to stay on top of for a long time. So they've got all these video interviews, and they've decided to do a textual analysis of them, which means, first, of course, they all have to be transcribed.
Mm-hmm.
And there's pretty good software to do that now. I mean, you use human beings, right?
I do. Yeah, yeah. I use Ginger, but I'm sure Ginger uses some sort of program to do it.
Well, in the old days, they would ship it to the Philippines, and they would have
Right,
two people type it, and then they compare their mistakes. And
right.
some human being would decide which was correct
Uh
and
huh.
give them a correct final version. No, but evidently now there is pure software that does it and does it pretty well. I mean, if Siri can understand almost everything you say on your iPhone,
Mm-hmm.
voice recognition has come a long way.
It certainly
So,
has.
so they're going to start by creating a transcript of the interview, and then they're going to analyze it like crazy to try to figure out something about the candidates. And interestingly, I mean, Mark Newman, the just turned 30 CEO of that company, who's a great guy and incredibly enthusiastic and smart, I said, well, who'd you get to do that? He said, well, we decided not to bring in any HR people. We decided we
Of
decided to
course.
bring in quant jocks from hedge funds who had condos in Park City, which is one of the many expensive ski areas that's 45 minutes from his office in Salt Lake City. He said, so they wouldn't have any preconceptions. And they are data scientists, in fact, even though they
Uh
don't
huh.
call themselves that. They call themselves quant jocks on Wall Street, and have them do it. So, hey, the guy's got a major bank using this software today, okay? And major banks are not well known to be big experimenters or, to
Absolutely.
hang their butt out over the edge. So we'll
Absolutely.
see how they do. And what is his next step going to be? I mean, I did say, I don't know, you're a fan of Homeland on Showtime, but I am, a TV show about the CIA. His
Mm-hmm.
next step is to do a vocal analysis of the interview, which sounds to me like being in a CIA interrogation room where
Yeah.
without wiring you up, they're monitoring your heartbeat and your voice and your eyeball movements and all that stuff all at once, um, and try to come out with more information about that. So they're in the game. And, I think there's certainly the left field entrant to the game. I
Hmm.
mean, another company in the game is Saba, which in their comp application has now put in predictive analytics on who may be leaving. And they've taken the next step, which is an important step for all the predictive analytics, which is okay, we've given you this analysis. Now, what should you do about it? And they are doing that.
Exactly.
They are giving you what you and I know is always this outrageously high. In fact, we did a show about them. I'm sorry to go on, but maybe people didn't hear it. Um, they give you the always outrageously high cost of replacing the person, and then
Hmm.
they tell you how much money they think you need to pay them in order to keep them. So, which is what you want to know, although it
Right.
may be firing their boss is the only way to keep them, or letting them work from home one day a week may be the only way to keep them. Who knows? But money is certainly high up on everyone's list on why they hold the
Absolutely.
job. Um, and so the point has been made that what good is predictive analytics unless you offer a solution to the problem that you've identified?
That's
And
right.
so they're one of the first ones to do that, and I think you'll find everyone else we mentioned will eventually do that as well.
And I think, Bill, to that point, retention is certainly on every HR leader's and recruiter's mind today because let's face it, the economy has really improved, and really high performers out there are being recruited by other organizations. So yeah, I think to your point, where so much of this now is focused on figuring out who in your organization is going to leave, if you do not do something preemptively to stop them from leaving, is part of the real value that most companies are going to be looking at in 2015 to try to get a handle around.
Absolutely, and the whole current ruckus about engagement ties right
Hmm.
into that. I mean, the fact is, the Gallup organization has been polling employees on engagement for decades. And for at least the last 10 years, they've told us it really
Really sucks.
sucks. That really
And
sucks.
in
That,
a lot of specific, places like financial services, it really sucks in financial services.
yeah. And that 20%, only 20%, 1/5 of your employees are really engaged in their work. And that half of the rest are sort of disengaged. And the other half are actively disengaged, which means they may be sabotaging your company's efforts while they're sitting at their desks because they're so pissed off. So absolutely right. I mean, this is part and parcel of those two things, and I think it's going to be the major issue in 2015, and the one that people are going to jump on the bandwagon. And by the way, I'm remiss now to add a company that revealed its predictive plans after the conference, which is namely Workday, which has purchased a company called now I can't think of it. The word satisfied comes to mind, but that's not the word. But they've bought a predictive analytics company, a data mining company, and they announced at their Rising user conference that who's going to leave, whom should you hire, are the two major focuses of that effort.
And you got to hang out
So
with Dave Duffield a little bit at HR Tech, didn't you?
well, I did, which was the best part about being an attendee, since he and I are old friends for 25 years. I published, when I had a magazine, I published the very first review of PeopleSoft 1.0, which put me into contact with him a lot when PeopleSoft was 13 people instead of the 13,000 people it was when it got acquired by Oracle. And so, yeah, I mean, the fact that I actually had time to sit down and have a private drink with him was just a pleasure. And I did get to see him a little bit at the user conference, but at the user conference, there are 2,000
Right,
people who want to sit down and have a
right.
drink with him. So that time was,
I think this is really a fascinating topic, and I think what Higher View is doing, I would refer to as scary cool. you
yes, it
know,
is scary. That's why I compare it to the CIA. It is
yeah,
scary cool. And if it works, that makes it both cooler and more scary.
exactly. Well, Bill, it's really been great to have this opportunity to catch up with you. And I look forward to doing more of these in 2015 and have a really happy new year.
Absolutely. I look forward to it too, and a happy new year to you and all your
Great.
listeners.
Thank you.